Okay, so this lesson is 6-8 equations and parentheses. So when we talk about equations and solving equations, especially when they have parentheses, we have to introduce what's called the order of operations. This is an acronym that I use to help me. Your parents likely learned it in school with a P instead of a G. But we are going to do it with a G, and there's a reason for that. So the G represents grouping. You need to be writing this down. So the G represents grouping. That could be parentheses or brackets. When your parents learned it in school, it was a P because it was only parentheses. And then we had to also do brackets. That became confusing. So we've changed it to grouping. So anything that groups parts of the equation together. E is for exponents. Now so far, in 5th grade, you've only worked with powers of 10. So like 10 to the 3rd. As you get older and as you continue in math, you'll start to do exponents with things that aren't 10. But for now, it'll be just 10s. And then below that you have M and D, and that stands for multiplication, division. Now, the confusing piece for some people is that they're in line together, so which one do you do first? You always work from left to right in the equation. So if you have both multiplication and division in your equation, whichever one comes first is the one that you do. That doesn't happen very often. And then the same thing for the bottom, which is addition and subtraction. Which are considered equals in our operations. So you go from left to right. The multiplication and division happens before addition and subtraction. Unless, of course, there's some sort of grouping happening, because then it would happen first. And we're going to see some examples of that. So make sure that you have this all written down, because you will need it. So write that down before you go to the next slide. Okay, so here's an example of an equation, and we're going to solve for n, which is our variable, and it is isolated. So all we're going to do is solve. Now, according to this, I need to do grouping first. So that means anything that's inside the grouping, I do first. Okay? So inside the grouping, or inside the parentheses, I have 12 divided by 4. So I solve that first. And what this is called is simplifying the equation. So I do that part first. 3, and then I keep everything else. Plus 2 equals n. Then I do the next step. There are no exponents. I don't have any multiplication and division left. But I do have addition. So I'm going to add those. 5 equals n. And I'm finished. So I circle my answer. So let's go back. I did what was inside my grouping symbols. So inside the parentheses happened first. That got me the 3. Then I was left with 3 plus 2 equals n. No exponents, no multiplication, no division, so I go to addition, and I'm left with 5 equals n. Later in higher math classes, you're going to have multiple steps. This year we're only going to deal with 2 steps. Okay? Here's that same problem, but I moved my grouping. Before it was over here like this. Okay? Let's look and see if we end up with a different answer. I start with what's inside the grouping. 4 plus 2. That equals 6. So I'm simplifying. 12 divided by 6 equals n. I don't have any exponents. I don't have any multiplication. However, I do have division. 12 divided by 6 is 2 equals n. And that's my answer. Do you see how just by moving the parentheses, I end up with a different answer? It was 5, and now it's 2. Nothing else changed. 12 divided by 4 plus 2. 12 divided by 4 plus 2. None of that changed. All I did was move the parentheses. So depending on where you have those parentheses, it impacts your solution. So let's do this 2 different ways. Let's solve it by doing 9 minus 6 divided by 3. And then, when we're done with that, let's solve it by doing 9 minus 6 divided by, 3. And see if it's different. So I start with my grouping. Okay, start with my grouping. 9 minus 6 equals 3. 3 divided by 3 equals 9. So my answer is 9. Let's come over here. Grouping first. 6 divided by 3 is 2. 9 minus 2 is 7. Do you see by just moving my parentheses over and doing something else first, it changes the problem completely? Let's do another. So let's start by doing it this way. 20 divided by 5 is 4 plus 5. 4 plus 5 is 9. Okay, that was the first way. Now, let's see if it will let me do this. Let's do it this way now. 5 plus 5 is 10. 20 divided by 10 is 2. 2 very different answers. All I did was switch where the parentheses were. So I'm going to rewrite this one because I think that may have been confusing on the last page. So if I have 4 times 2 in the parentheses plus 1, that's going to be 4 times 2 is 8 plus 1. 8 plus 1 is 9. Okay, so that's one way. Now I could do it 4 times, and then move the parentheses over, 2 plus 1. Let's see what I get now. Parentheses have to happen first. 2 plus 1 is 3. 4 times 3 is 12. 2 different answers. So now this one's different. I gave you a full equation, so this one equals 0. We have to figure out how to make it actually equal 0. So I'm going to start by just sticking the parentheses here, see what I get. Okay, 16 minus 8 is 8. 8 times 2 equals 16. So that doesn't work because 16 and 0 aren't equal. So that's not correct. So I need to move the parentheses. How about I do it this way? 8 times 2 is 16. 16 minus 16 is 0. So that's the correct answer. So depending on where you put the parentheses, you get a different answer. And sometimes you're given the parentheses and you just have to figure out the answer. Sometimes you're not given the parentheses and you are given the answer and you need to put the parentheses in the correct place to get the right answer. And then sometimes you have a word problem. And if you have a word problem, you have to solve it. I went to the store and I bought a pair of pants for $21.99. So let's see, some pants, and they are $21.99. Okay, and then I bought 3 shirts. Let's get a different color for the shirts. Okay, and they are $15.95 each. So this one's $15.95. This one is $15.95. This one is $15.95. So I need to come up with an equation to solve it. Well, I have to do $15.95 3 times. So 3 times $15.95 plus, I just have the one $21.99. $21.99. So I need to go to a new page because I'm out of space. Pause and get that all down before you go on with me. So I have $15.95 times 3. I need to do that. And that's 15, 27, 28, 15, 17, 3, 4. 1, 2, 1, 2. So I have $47.85. And if I go back to my equation, so I did this part, I did my grouping. Now I have to add on that $21.99. It's 14, 18, 9, 8. So if I go to the store and buy that stuff, I'm going to spend $89.84. Okay, so tomorrow in class, Monday in class, we are going to spend more time solving these problems and working through the order of operations to do so. So see you then.